Good evening. Today is March 17th, and this is the District of Sechelt regular council meeting. It is 7:01 p.m. and I'd like to acknowledge that we're coming to you from the Sechelt Nation territory. We have an amended agenda in front of us this evening. There was an addition of one item, 3.1, which has changed the numbering through the package. So is there anyone on council who does not have the amended agenda? All right, I'd look for a motion to adopt the amended agenda as presented. Moved and seconded, all in favor? Thank you. Before we go any further, are there any conflict of interest tonight in this agenda? All right, not seeing anything. We're going to move on to appointments and delegations. And we have with us tonight, Nicholas, is it Wisewith? Architect, and Bruce Mason from West Coeur Lands. Welcome, gentlemen, and you'll have 10 minutes tonight.
Thanks, everyone. Nice to see everyone again. Thanks for letting us speak today. We saw that we heard a couple weeks ago that we were going to come back. Our project for 5410 Mills Road was going to come back to council for a little update. So we thought we'd just also provide just a bit of context to the update that's coming up. I understand it's coming down on later in the agenda. So I guess really what we wanted to speak about today, because I don't know if hopefully everyone's gone through the agenda so they can see the updated report from planning and the updated design. So again, we're here just today to give a bit more of high level context to what's been going on that project. So it was some time ago that we initially applied with a 44 unit townhome development for 5410 Mills Road. And that was some time ago. We're looking back now on the calendar. It's actually almost one calendar year when that was actually applied to. And since then, we've actually been working with the planning departments, and we've done a community open house. And what you're seeing today in the agenda and with the letter is our amended application with 34 townhomes, which is a considerable, a lowering of the density for the site. So also another high level items that have been changing, which when we originally applied for again a year ago, there were a lot of comments about how a lot of the developments looked a bit of the same, a bit of, lack of better words, copy and paste throughout the site. So over the year of working with planning with the community, we've also come to change the massing. So we now, rather than having long rows of townhomes everywhere, we've now have duplexes, triplex, and fourplexes. So now we're showing different sizes on the site. And this all comes down to really high level to allow to provide different types of housing needs to different buyers and different renters in Sechelt. So there has been some comments in the past where citizens and planning staff have asked us about why is it not just a single family home development, which was the original, what is the OCP is what is deemed for. But we feel that, and the client feels that there's a need for a slightly higher densified housing typology for West Sechelt. So that's why, again, we have duplexes and triplexes and fourplexes, all ranging between 2 and 3 bedrooms. So again, I don't think today is really the time to get into the fine details of it, but more to tell you that we've been working with the community and with planning to really scale back this density on this property that has been requested from us, and we're going in that direction. And we've also met with planning as recent as just a few days ago, and I think all parties are slowly coming together to the same understanding. So obviously there's some things that still need to be negotiated, but I don't think that's what is the purpose of today's meeting at council. That's maybe more for the formal first and second reading. But today, again, it's more of a high level update that we've listened, and we've brought it down to this under 34 units, which I think is now going, like I said, nearing what everyone was actually anticipated for this site. So As well with me today is Bruce, Bruce Mason from the team. And so again, out of today's, I mean, maybe we get to the item on the agenda. Bruce and I are here to answer any questions if there are any from the council. Yeah, I'll stop there unless Bruce, if you have any two words you want to say as well.
Just wanted to say hi and just to echo what you said, we're kind of pleased with where it's come through. We had that community meeting a while ago, and I had a chance to host that, and it was really good to meet and hear from the residents, and then we've taken it back and been able to address some of those issues as well as some of the other issues from the planning council. So anyway, I just wanted to say hi, and we're here. So thanks.
All right, thank you. I'll turn to council. Do you have any questions for the delegation? Okay, I have one question. You indicated rental and purchase. Are some of the units anticipated to be rentals, or are they
right? The current intent is that it is a market development, so they will be sold. However, right now there is a letter of intent being drafted to have 5 units set aside to a BC Housing initiative. And from there, that group will purchase or take ownership of those 5 units, and then those would be rented out to lower income to make them more, I know we don't like using the word more affordable, but let's say under market rental apartments and townhomes. But so out of the 34 right now, 5 of them are the intent. 5 of the 34 will be for under market rental.
Thank you. Councillor Lamb.
Yeah. I was just wondering, like, so you're going from 44 units down to 34 units. Is that going to affect the cost of these units? I'm just sort of thinking,
Well, the straight answer is yes. I mean, the black and white answer is yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's
how much. That is an issue where it comes down to. It's still a negotiation between community contributions. So it's a bigger question than just will it just in terms of ratio be higher. But I think it's right now we're still at the stage of talking to planning about what is the community contribution for this development. So when all those numbers balance out, then we'll find out really what the townhomes will be going for.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Councillor McLean.
Yeah, on the outline of all the suites, they all appear to be exactly the same size, all 3 bedrooms. So just looking for a little clarification about how the 10 that will have secondary suites work. Essentially, it'll be 2 in one unit, 1 in the other type deal.
Yeah. Again, what we've done right now in terms of actually it's just more of a numbers game right now. So the plan what we show are kind of just typical floor plans, not floor plans for every single unit. It's kind of just a typical floor plan. Once we get into the design development stage of the project, then we'll go far more into detail whether they become 2 or 3 bedrooms. But the intent is that for 5 of the units on site right now as well, they will have a secondary suite in the basement or lock-off suite. So someone's living on level 1 and 2, and then someone's also living, and then someone separately is living in the basement. And the reason why that hasn't been completely refined in terms of exactly is it 5, is it 6, or is it 7, is we're also balancing parking requirements. So there's a requirement for townhomes. There's two parking stalls per unit. And then we're also, there's a requirement for 1 parking stall per secondary suite or block-off unit. And so we're balancing between the request from planning about making the building shape and how far we do our setbacks from the street. So another big thing that's changed, which I don't know if it's clear if you've gone through the presentation, is the buildings originally were also very close to the street. They were only about 10 feet away. Now all the buildings have been set back 20 to 25 feet away from the street. So you're gonna have a much big buffer space between the street and the buildings. The domino effect of that is that our parking has gotten smaller because of that. So we're balancing making the street edge a lot more pleasant and also how many parking stalls we can get in the center. And then that's numbers gained about how many actually secondary suites do we end up with? Is it 4, 5, or 6? And that's what we're going through right now.
All right, any other questions by council? All right, seeing no further questions. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your presentation. And I'm
Thank
sure
you.
you'll probably be hanging around to see what happens later on in the meeting.
Yes, we will.
All right, thank you. So I think Jennifer is probably going to move you out into the gallery. There you go. So we'll move on to item 5.1. This is the minutes of the 5:30 p.m. special council meeting of March 3rd, 2021 for adoption. Look for a motion to adopt. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. Item 5.2, minutes of the regular council meeting of March 3rd. And this again is for adoption. Move adoption, second. Any errors or omissions in these minutes? All right, seeing none. All those in favor? Thank you. And item 5.3, minutes of the regular council meeting of Wednesday, March 10th for adoption. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. Any business arising from the minutes? All right, we'll move on to minutes of the Advisory Planning Commission meeting of March 2nd. And this is for receipt. Look for a motion for receipt. Moved and seconded, all in favor? Thank you. And then Committee of the Whole minutes of Wednesday, March 10th, item 7.1. And this again is for receipt and endorsement. Someone like to move receipt and endorsement? Moved and seconded. Any changes, errors, or omissions in this one? All those in favor? Thank you. Moving on to bylaws.
Can I
This is
just
for-
jump in
Sorry,
quickly?
yes, go ahead, yes,
Sorry, I just missed my opportunity on the APC meeting.
okay. So Councillor McLean, I think you've frozen. Councillor Toth.
Well, while we wait for Councillor McLean to come back, I also have a question regarding the APC minutes on page 24. The APC had great discussion about that garage being proposed by the Clayton family there, and I noticed that the recommendation that council supports it was defeated. But I note there was really no further recommendations from the APC on that particular issue. And I'm just wondering, are they looking to have that come back one more time, or what, what's the next steps for that particular application?
Hi, happy to answer that if you will. I lost
Yes,
my
please.
mouse pointer briefly. We have been working with the applicants to consider what the options are. I think the applicants heard the APC comments, and that inspired them to think about other options. So the APC, essentially, we're looking for a notion of support or non-support. We could have brought the development variance permit on this agenda and recommended denial or issuance and noted what APC's comment was. But between planning staff and the applicant, we've taken stock and are examining what other options are out there at the moment. And it's to be determined, but we might move away from this application, or we might report back at an upcoming council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McLean, we lost you there for a second.
Yeah, I thought you might have. I just wanted to bring up the recommendation from APC regarding drawing up definitive and legible guidelines to apply for variances. Is now the time to discuss that, or will staff be bringing back a report about that?
Mr. Allen.
Well, I think now might be the time to discuss it. Staff would look to council for a resolution on that topic one way or the other, because the APC is ultimately advising council if that's their preference. And so staff will take direction from council on that.
Okay, so I guess the question around that is, are there guidelines already in legislation that we would be following? Or do we need to draft something to make those clearer?
Well, there's guidelines in the Local Government Act respecting Board of Variance applications. And they are interesting guidelines. They talk about impact on adjacent properties, impact on public lands, impact on the environment, and so forth. But for some reason, they're in the act pertaining to Board of Variance, but the same guidelines are not there pertaining to development variance permits. So there are similarities and differences between the two. I think we would look at those type of guiding principles rather than saying council won't give anything beyond 10% increase, because each application, of course, should be considered upon its own merits. So I think I would recommend and be more comfortable with guiding principles rather than mathematics and numbers.
Thank you. Councillor McLean, is this a follow-up?
Councillor Toth can go first.
Thank you. Councillor Toth.
As it happens, Director Allen there in his last few words actually touched on what my question was going to be, which was, you know, they were very specifically talking about guidelines for whether an applicant even should try if they're looking for a variance greater than X percentage or what have you. And my understanding is that applicants they have the right to apply for whatever variance they want in whatever amount they want due to the Local Government Act. I'm just wondering, is that fundamentally correct, regardless of how out to lunch their proposal might be?
Yes, I think that planning staff do a lot of good work in advance with applicants. As I think perhaps it was APC, I pointed out that sometimes variances are avoided simply because we come up with a solution that wasn't originally considered. Sometimes we just say we simply can't support that. Other times we might say, well, it's a bit of a toss-up and we can never guarantee what council might decide, but we can accept your application and move forward, right? But in the case of auxiliary buildings where the floor space is 100 square meters, I just don't think it passes the test of fairness to say we will never take an application for anything greater than 110 square meters. Because I do think somebody could come in at 112 or even 125, hypothetically speaking, and it makes sense given the terrain or the property. So I think we need to be a little bit open in that regard.
Councillor McLean.
Yeah, so I had a similar comment to Councillor Toth in that applicants can apply for whatever they wish. It's our planning staff's job to try and get them closer to compliance. And then it's our job to decide finally. So I don't think a guideline would be appropriate here, and I wouldn't support any motion relating to what the APC has recommended.
So Councillor McLean, you're not looking to make a recommendation then that we draw up definitive and legible guidelines?
No, I wanted to bring it up for discussion, but that's it.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, let's move on to the zoning amendment. This is item 8.1A, page 31. This is rezoning application for 5547 Trail Avenue City State Consulting, zoning amendment bylaw number 25-308-2020 as amended. And I'd look for a motion to receive the report. Moved. Seconded, all in favor? Thank you. And over to staff.
Thank you. I just have a very brief presentation to illustrate the changes to the bylaw. So at the March 3rd, 2021 council meeting, staff presented the zoning amendment bylaw number 25-308-2020 for city state for the property at 5547 Trail Avenue. for third reading, and the following resolution was passed that council directs staff to revise the bylaw for a site-specific bylaw amendment. Council took that direction and suggest some amendments that will not invoke an additional public hearing, as density and use are not being affected. In the bylaw, the reference to lot width has been removed, as this would be a clear indicator that subdivision beyond the particular property in question is not being considered. And an additional section is added to indicate that the section for the change in minimum lot size to 350 square meters exclusively applies to the subject property. And with that, we have 3 further recommendations for council that are the same recommendations as previously provided, to provide third reading, to secure the amenity, and to refer the bylaw to the Ministry of Transportation. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, any questions? Seeing no questions, what would you like to do with the recommendations on page 31? Councillor Scott.
So it's quiet tonight. I'll move the recommendation 2 that council give third reading to zoning amendment bylaw 25-308 22 city state as amended, and recommendation 3 and 4. Do you want me to read them out?
No, that's fine.
All right.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for those recommendations? Seconded. All those in favor? Thank you. Councillor McLean. Do you have a question?
I was going to just provide a little comment.
Go ahead. Go ahead. We still have to go to the zone, the actual bylaw.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank staff for providing this change. I think we can support this one particular property being subdivided. But as we look to developing a new zoning bylaw, I like that we maintain that some semblance of creating laneway housing in the rest of downtown Sechelt. So I look forward to future discussions at the zoning bylaw or the new zoning bylaw discussion. Yeah, thank you. Thank
you. So moving on to the bylaw itself, item 8.1B on page 35. This is bylaw number 25-308-2020 City State, being a bylaw to amend District of Sechelt zoning bylaw number 25-1987. I look for someone to move third reading.
I don't think we actually voted on the motion, on the recommendations.
We did. That was before, yeah, before Councillor McLean said his piece. That's okay. I like it when you ask. It's good because I miss stuff. All right, so we've had somebody moved and seconded third reading. Yes, all those in favor. Thank you. Moving on to item 8.2A. This is certification of alternative approval process results and adoption of loan authorization bylaw number 594/2020 for the Public Works and Parks Operations Center. Motion to receive the report. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. And over to our corporate officer, Ms. Frank.
Thank you, Your Worship. This report is to bring forward the results of the alternative approval process that was held for loan authorization bylaw number 594/2020 Public Works Parks Operations Center, and to bring forward the bylaw for council's consideration of adoption. To provide a little bit of background, at its September 2nd regular council meeting, council gave first, second, and third reading to loan authorization bylaw number 594. And then subsequent to that, at its December 16th regular meeting, council passed a resolution as shown there on the first page of my report, page 37 of the agenda, passed a resolution setting the making a fair determination of the estimated number of qualified electors in the District of Sechelt, and setting the deadline for elector response forms and establishing what the elector response form should look like. Council's fair determination set the estimated qualified electors in the district at 8,603. In order for this AAP, therefore, to pass, council would need to receive less than 10% of qualified electors, and that number is 860. So the AAP was administered and closed at the deadline of February 26th at 4 p.m. And at the time of the deadline, we had received a total of 509 valid elector response forms. So given that the district did not receive valid elector response forms surpassing the 10% threshold, this proposed project, electoral approval has been achieved for this proposed project. A copy of the corporate officer's certificate of the elector response form results is attached as required by legislation, and it would be appropriate for council to consider proceeding with adoption of the loan authorization bylaw. If council does adopt it, there is, under the legislation, there is a 30-day quashing period that we must hold off on doing anything further with the bylaw. And then after that is over, we would send it on to the inspector of municipalities for their final review and a final certificate. Once we get that back, staff will bring a further report forward to council, providing options for the actual borrowing. That's my report, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, any questions or comments? Councillor Toth.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank our staff for making sure that there was communications on this, that there was active efforts to engage with people who did have questions. The number of response forms is a little higher than I would like it to have been, but ultimately it is well under that 10% threshold. So I'm happy that we're going to be moving forward with this today. I know there were some questions through the process that weren't really able to be answered to some people's satisfaction, and the answer was we simply don't know some of those things yet. You know, sewer was a really good example on that, how we were going to service the facility. And yeah, just wanted to provide those comments. Thank you.
Right. Anybody else? I'd like to actually say thank you to the members of the community who got engaged. There were some members of the community who didn't think this should move forward, and so they were actively out campaigning against it. And whether or not we agreed with them, or whether, you know, I mean, we in the end we had this passed, but I'd like to thank them for actually doing that, because it raised the profile of the project in the community. So more people were aware of it than maybe wouldn't have been otherwise. So I want to thank them for doing that. That's I like to see them get engaged, and I'm sure all of us had conversations with various people in the community because of some of those people who are out there actively knocking on doors and talking to their neighbors and friends. Thank you as well to staff. I know there was a lot of work done behind the scenes. Some people became video stars. It was kind of neat to see them. So, and those will be on our Facebook page too for people to follow down the road. All right, so there is a recommendation on page 37. Councillor Rowe.
I just wanted to thank staff as well. And one of the takeaways from this process, I think, is, you know, when we use the example of the video tour that was done, I had a lot of comments on that, and I think moving forward, that's a great way to engage the public with what our staff actually do. Was actually quite surprised at some of the questions that I had at work. So thank you for doing that. And I am pleased to move recommendation 2 that council proceed with consideration of adoption of loan authorization bylaw 504, 2020 Public Works Parks Operations Center.
Is there a seconder for the recommendation? Seconded. All those in favor? Thank you. So moving on to item 8.2B on page 41. This is District of Sechelt Loan Authorization Bylaw number 594, 2020 Public Works Parks Operations Center, a bylaw to authorize the borrowing of the estimated cost for the Public Works and Parks Operations Center. And I'd look for someone to move adoption. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. We have no new business. So we're moving on to business items. Item 10.1, notice of motion, Sunshine Coast call to action. And this is a motion by Councillor McLean. So Councillor McLean, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. So attached to the report is the Sunshine Coast call to action. This was developed through the emergency housing meeting on March 1st with over 20 service providers on the Sunshine Coast and representatives from all local governments. So what this is a starting point. It's establishing a shared commitment and some shared language as we start to address this housing crisis. It's for local service providers and local governments. We're looking for endorsements from a variety of groups and local governments. Yeah, what the intention of this is to show that we're all in this together, and that we all need to chip in to make a difference in this housing crisis. The housing crisis that we are facing right now due to market pressures and the COVID-19 pandemic are probably the biggest threat to the Sunshine Coast lifestyle today. We hear about our essential workers. We hear about businesses struggle to recruit the hospital. We're struggling to recruit the RCMP. We hear about people moving off the coast. I have lost far too many friends recently because they couldn't find adequate housing. And it just forces people to accept lower quality housing and accept inadequate housing. So I think our residents look to us as council to lead and propose solutions to help get our community out of this crisis. Now, I don't have all of the solutions, and that's what I think this is really neat, in that it's a collaborative process. Endorsement of this call to action is the first step in kicking off a collaborative process where we can learn from others, work together, and start coming up with solutions for us to implement, for citizens to implement, for higher levels of government to implement. And hopefully we can start to work our way out of this housing crisis. Thank you.
All right, Council, do you have any questions for Councillor McLean or comments? Councillor Toth.
Thank you. I certainly appreciate the intent of this. I can certainly, we recognize the needs and the problems that we are facing here on the coast. I'm a little concerned with the specific points that are listed here as the call to action points, in that they're not directly actionable items. They're very high level things that I think it's going to be hard for us to track any sort of meaningful progress on. I think the most actionable item on this list is actually number 6, the take meaningful incremental actions as outlined in the Housing Needs Assessment Implementation Framework before the end of 2021. And by endorsing this, this is adding this to staff's plate to ensure that there is actions taken that may or may not fit within their existing work plan. And I have concerns around that. There there are some things that can come forward as part of zoning bylaw updates and what have you, but I'm worried about voting in favor of things that we really can't deliver on. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor McLean.
This is the largest issue we're facing. We need to take action here. And you're right, it's a very high level approach. But what is not high level is the housing needs implementation framework. There are a lot of really good recommendations in there. And I think point 6, as you mentioned, we intentionally included incremental because we recognize we're not going to just snap our fingers and solve this. This is a commitment to put in real effort. And by saying that our staff does not have enough time for this, we need to make time. This is a commitment that says we are going to make meaningful progress. And I think that is paramount to what we are doing here in local government.
Thank you. Councillor Lamb, and then we'll go to Councillor Rowe. Councillor Lamb, you're muted.
There. I support what Alton, Councillor Toth has to say here. You know, it's great to have the community and all these organizations get together and say, yes, we have to move forward. But, you know, you have to have people that most of these organizations don't have the ability to put a shovel in the ground or put a building up. And that's what we need is we need, you know, somehow we got to, you know, we have to tell the people who own the land is we got to get moving here. We got to get, you know, get some development done and get some houses put up. So, you know, I mean, we're hearing that our staff is definitely overworked and their case, you know, their workload is lots. So it's great that this has come together and there's a lot of good points here, but you know, somehow we got to get to the developers to tell them to get moving. We'll support them. That's it.
Thank you. Councillor Rowe.
Okay, so to Councillor Toth's point, not all of these actions are actionable by every group. So this is high level and you have to look at it through the lens of your own group. So what, as you know, the Community Resource Center, what role can I play in this? And that's, I think, and Councillor McLean will correct me if I'm wrong, sort of the lens that we look at this through. I mean, you're right, the really actionable items are in the housing needs implementation framework. And that's going to be, that's a huge, huge part of this. But we haven't made, as a community, we haven't made a whole lot of headway doing what we've been doing so far. So, you know, it's a grassroots movement. It's a grassroots organization, and there's lots of people that have committed to this, and I'm not getting lost in the minutia of it. It is very high level, like most call to actions are. And I mean, I think I don't argue with the fact that we have given staff a lot of things to do, and that's part of the work that we have to do, is figure out how we provide them the capacity then. And this is incremental. This is not all at once, but we have to start somewhere. My thoughts.
Okay, I'm going to speak in favor of this too, for a couple of reasons. With every situation that we deal with in the community, the first level is always awareness. So the poverty reduction plan group are actually going out, gathering information. And one of the things that they found is that there's a lot of poverty here on the Sunshine Coast. But what has been made even worse through COVID is the fact that people are so insulated in their own groups that they don't know what the situation is outside of those few people that they're interacting with on a daily basis. So part of what was behind doing this emergency housing meeting is to bring together the various groups on the Sunshine Coast who are dealing with housing on a day-to-day basis. I mean, if you read that list, everybody on there is dealing with people who are in crisis situations. So this was to bring them together and then provide a common framework or a common view that they can look at what we're dealing with from, so that in their day-to-day activities at their organizations, their government role, whatever, they have this lens to look at all the decisions they make from. It's not saying you have to do this, you have to do that. It's giving the view. It's like putting a lens in front of them so that every time they make a decision, they filter it through this. Are we moving these initiatives forward or are we not? And if not, why not? So it's more of that kind of, that's why it is really high level. There's only the one, as you indicate, there's only the one goal on there that actually is actionable. All the rest of them are just a lens to look at the situation through and to raise the profile of it in the community. Part of what's going to be happening through this group is that initially we've approached all of the organizations on the coast who are dealing with housing. There were lots of organizations that weren't even invited because they don't have a role in housing at this point. But this is a conversation that needs to become a community conversation and will as we move forward. Again, this would then be the lens that we look at and share the information with the community as well. Right? So things like creating opportunities for shared understanding, connection, and community building. That's important. There has to be a recognition that all of the people who live in our community deserve a place to live, that they can afford, and that gives them dignity and lets them stay here and work in the jobs that they're working. So it was purposely called a call to action. This is the direction we're looking at moving in. If you don't want to do anything, you don't have to, but if you do, this is the lens you should be viewing housing from. So I'm fully in support of this. And I know that all these organizations that are listed here have taken it back to their own organizations. And over the next month, we'll be asked whether or not they are willing to support it as well. And some have already stepped up. Councillor Toth.
Thank you. I will be voting in favor of support for this because, you know, it's one of those things that's easy for us to support at this time. But looking at this list, you know, who on this list is going to be building apartment buildings or housing in the next 5 years or the next 10 years? I wonder, well, I'll ask the question because I was unable to attend the meeting where this was developed. Were any members from the building associations invited to the meeting? Did we have, were there any representatives of the builder community involved in this? Because we can call for this and we can ask for this, but if we're not getting the builders taking this on as well, then it's not going to go anywhere.
Councillor McLean.
So yes, I believe somebody from the, looking at the list, I thought somebody from the Sunshine Coast Building Association was invited, but maybe not.
They were invited, yes.
Yeah. I think the perception that we can build our way out of this issue is challenging. The Sunshine Coast is a destination. A lot of people want to move here. And a lot of people, particularly in COVID, people realize that city living may not be the best approach for their lifestyle in COVID and working from home. So they want to live to a more rural area like the Sunshine Coast. So people will always move here. What I want to do is think about how we can keep people here. We can't keep people here by building more houses. That caters to people who want to move here. So yes, they play a role. Yes, I want to work with the developers. I want to support them through our planning process. I want to have further conversations with them. But there is so much more we can be doing to keep our residents here. And that's what I think this commitment really entitles.
Again, as well, to your question, Councillor Toth, your comment is, with this group, we were looking at what actions could be worked on over the next 1 to 3 months. So more short term. I mean, we know that we've got a lot of development coming forward through the District of Sechelt, through, you know, it's going through planning. We've got one on our agenda today. But those are going to take time. So what we wanted to do was target those groups who could potentially have actions that could be moved forward in a really short period of time. Do we need to connect with the building community? Definitely. And that's a longer term conversation. So yes, they will be part of the conversation. They weren't in this initial meeting. Any other questions or comments?
I'll
Yeah,
just
Councillor Rowe.
say one last thing. I think, and I tend to do it too, I go straight to, well, let's get the hammer. Somebody needs to build something right now. But within our existing community, we have, I mean, all these groups do phenomenal work. A lot of them aren't connected to each other. It's kind of surprising for how many projects that involve making books about resources for people. It's kind of surprising how unconnected some of them are. And I think, you know, that there's work to be done around houses that are half empty, that actually have capacity to take somebody in. Like, we're not doing any of that kind of work. It's not just about building in my mind. So we hired a new anesthetist yesterday. And she's done some snooping around and there's not much out there. I put it on Facebook and I've got 5 messages of places for her to go look at. So I ask in my mind, why is that? You know, it could be as, some of the work is as simple as finding a way to connect people. So I just don't want to get lost in the it's all about building conversation. I think this issue is much broader than that. And I think a lot of the solutions won't involve government or our staff whatsoever. But what we've been, I think the great work that Councillor McLean has done is bringing us all together to have that conversation. And I think, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, but I think that's what we're trying to do.
Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, I support this program moving forward, but staff should be made aware of it. But I don't see, you know, it shouldn't take up a whole bunch of staff's time. Just and exactly what Councillor Rowe just said here. There's a huge, there's a whole bunch of information out there that people know about, and if you want to find a place to stay or a place to live, there's places that are available. So I don't see why, like, I support it. I think staff should be made aware of it, and we'll just leave it at that and pass it on. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lamb, staff from the District of Sechelt and the Town of Gibson's actually, no, District of Sechelt and SCRD and the Sechelt Nation actually attended the meeting. And we had councillors from all of the various governments on the Sunshine Coast, including the school district. Councillor Kuster.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely will be supporting this. I think it is about making everyone aware, bringing everyone together that maybe are working on the same thing. Like Brenda or Councillor Rowe said, there's multiple people maybe doing the same thing. And it is a problem we have right now. Like, I know 5 people that are looking for 5 professional people looking for places to live right now, and they can't find it. So how do we connect people? How do we make those connections? What are some short-term goals we can action on right now to move this forward? We're not talking about, yeah, we're going to start building, you know, shovels in the ground tomorrow. This is short-term goals first, and how we can get everyone together, be collaborative, and think about this moving forward, because this is not going to go away. It's just only going to get worse if we don't look at this now and start making small incremental steps. So that's all I have to say.
All right, seeing no further hands up. Councillor McLean.
I think we're ready for a motion.
All right, so first to receive the report. Someone like to moved and seconded, all in favor? Thank you. Then Councillor McLean, did you want to make a recommendation?
Would. Whereas community members came together on March 1st, 2021 to address the housing crisis and drafted the attached Sunshine Coast call to action. Be it resolved that council endorse the attached Sunshine Coast call to action.
Is there a seconder for the recommendation? Seconded? All those in favor? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor McLean. Moving on, item 10.2. This is rezoning application for multifamily development on Mills Road, West Core Lands. Motion to receive the report. Moved. Seconded. All in favor? Thank you. Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I have a short presentation. Okay, so as the delegation talked about as well, we've got this rezoning application for multifamily development on Mills Road. Just as a reminder, we're looking at this central block portion, a portion of a property that is the three pieces here, plus a separate portion here. But this particular rezoning application is just focused on this middle block portion. As previously mentioned, originally it was a 44-unit townhouse proposal. Since that time, the most recent revised proposal from March 3rd is a 34-unit townhouse proposal. Just as a reminder, the 44 units was looking something like this: 11 buildings, all of which were blocks of 4, and pretty much all 3-bedroom units. Again, the original site plan, just for reference. So with this 34-unit proposal, the site plan has changed fairly substantially. There's 10 buildings now, and it has basically a mix of blocks of 4, blocks of 3, and blocks of 2. So we have, again, the previous proposal also included some 3-story buildings, and all the buildings in the revised proposal will be 2 stories. And we have basically 6 blocks of 4, 2 blocks of 3, and 2 blocks of 2, basically like duplexes. And as the architect mentioned in the delegation, they have altered the setbacks too. So around on the eastern side, the buildings have been pushed back from the boundary from where they were on the previous iteration. And again, on the sides of the proposal in the front, the buildings staggered along each frontage. So again, to help address some of the massing and other concerns with the units on the site. And this is just a more zoomed in view of the site plan for this 34-unit proposal. And then a rendering of what this might look like, just from an aerial perspective. So as the report notes, with this change in the number of units coming down to 34 units, it does mean that no OCP amendment is required anymore. Under the residential land use designation, the 34 units is within that 35 unit threshold that the residential land use designation has for these types of units. So that removes the need to consider an OCP amendment alongside the zoning amendment. So we can just focus on a zoning amendment bylaw based around these 34 townhouse units and all the various setbacks and height and other parameters. That helps simplify matters quite a bit. And yeah, as the report talks about seeking direction from council to prepare a bylaw based on this 34-unit proposal, bring it back to council at some point in April for first reading, and from there do the formal referral process to all the usual agencies. It also gives us the opportunity to send the revised proposal and the bylaw back to the APC for their comments, as well as the community association again. And then everyone can have a look at but not just the revised proposal, but the actual zoning amendment bylaw based around it, as well as additional recommendations highlighting the need to have key issues addressed before we move to second reading. So that's it. I'll turn it over for any questions.
Thank you. Council, any questions? Okay, while they're thinking, I have one question. Why the bollards in the middle? I think I know what you're going to answer, but why the bollards in the middle on the long stretch behind the row of houses?
That's not a requirement coming from the district. That's something that the applicant has just shown on their site plans for various iterations. So there's that doesn't necessarily have to be in there permanently. That's just something that they've been showing. There's no requirement on our end for that kind of installation.
Okay, I was thinking it was probably just to ensure that there's not, speeding through there because it's a family site, right?
Yeah, I mean, likely it's meant as traffic calming.
Mm-hmm. All right, Councillor Kuster and then Councillor McLean.
I just had a question regarding the parking. So they've asked to have the parking reduced. So where is there parking on street, or where would how would they manage that? Or there would just be no parking available for what is required?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll have to have further conversations with the applicant on that. It's I guess they haven't settled on the exact number of secondary suites that there would be, or how they're proposing to, if there was a reduction being sought, how they would accommodate that. I mean, it's definitely fewer parking spaces than previously they were proposing to seek a variance on, but it's given that this site is not right downtown. It's still in a very auto-oriented location. I mean, there is some limited transit in the area, but it's still very much car dependent. So it's we'd have to hear more of a rationale from them to support removing parking spaces. I suppose there is an opportunity for on-street parking, but again, this is a larger issue for the district in terms of not sort of trading on-street parking spaces for off-street parking spaces, depending on what's available on the street frontage, and that's more for visitor use potentially. So that aspect will take some more work moving forward to see what is the final number of suites, as well as what kind of parking reduction they're seeking.
Councillor McLean and Councillor Toth.
Councillor Toth have a follow-up to that one, or a different track?
It's a follow-up to that one, sort of, but
okay,
whatever.
Then I'll let you go first.
Assuming that's okay with the mayor.
I'm fine with that. You guys invited out. I'm okay.
I've got a family friend who just moved into a place that only comes with one parking stall, and it's gonna suck for them, but they're gonna find a way to make it work. Yeah, one of their vehicles is gonna be parked out on the street, which is less than ideal. I had an actual question though, which within that parking reduction, is there the ability for either us or the applicant to suggest or require a car share vehicle? That might be a way to mitigate some of the parking concerns if the families don't all have to have two vehicles, if there's a car share vehicle available within the complex.
Yeah, there's certainly those kinds of options available to consider if we're looking at proposed reduction in the number of required parking spaces. The one thing we're always looking at is the various transportation demand management options that are available, and certainly considering car shares is one of those aspects to kind of provide a justification for supporting that reduction in parking spaces. So we'd be looking for the applicant to come up with some options there on how they will support this reduction, given that a lot of these units are originally they were all 3-bedroom units. Some of them may only be 2-bedroom units moving forward, but still pretty significant units. And while our parking regulations in the zoning bylaw are generally on the conservative side, it is harder to consider that allowing suites with no parking space whatsoever.
Thank you. Councillor McLean.
Yeah, I think just in general, this is kind of, this isn't first reading yet. So we're at this kind of odd stage that's pre-first reading. So I have further comments that would be more appropriate at first reading. And I think planning staff have a bit of work to put into this. And I'm sure they're like the parking. I think that's a great example of stuff planning will work through. So I just want to support the planning department in doing the work and bringing back a fully prepared first reading. So then we are good to go through our normal process. And I just want to flag that I have accessibility concerns. There's no handicap parking. There's a whole lot of stairs entering the units. And that stuff I know our planning department will be on top of. So I just want to support them and do that and get this to first reading with the proper analysis through the planning department.
Councillor McLean, would you like to make some recommendations then?
Oh, okay. I will move recommendation 2 that council direct staff to prepare a zoning amendment bylaw based on the March 3rd, 2021 proposal to be considered for first reading and April 2021 council meeting. And recommendation 3, that prior to consideration of second reading, council request that the applicant to submit the required traffic assessment by a qualified professional engineer to address the threshold in OCP policy 1210 as previously requested. And B, request that the applicant propose a voluntary community amenity contribution in accordance with the policies contained within the official community plan.
Is there a seconder for those recommendations? Seconded. Thank you. Any further comments or questions? All those in favor? Thank you. Moving on, item 10.3, Mr. Douglas. So we'll be coming to you. Let me get to this. So first, this is item 10.3, COVID Safe Restart Fund Grant for Local Governments. I'd look for a motion to receive the report. Moved and seconded. Is there a seconder? Seconded, all in favor? Thank you. Mr. Douglas, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I provided a report here that the purpose is to have council authorize staff to move forward on a number of projects that are related to the COVID-19 Safe Restart program. We had received 2.5 million late last year, and there are restrictions on these funds, and these funds are, typically for the local government as they deal with increased operating costs due to COVID-19. The eligible costs that we can use these funds for would be for facility reopening and operating costs, emergency planning and response, protective services and bylaw enforcement costs, program related to vulnerable populations, computer and other electronic technology, budgeted revenues that have not been collected or revenue shortfalls. Previously, we have had a motion of council to spend 81,600 of these funds, and included in this list are a number of projects that equal $780,392. Included in my report is a small paragraph on each item, including at the end a little more detail with pictures and one request form. Does council have any questions on any of one of the projects, or?
Councillor Rowe.
Actually, my question is there a timeline on when this, the money have to be spent by a certain amount or a certain date?
Well, right now, they don't really say that there's a firm deadline. When you go to the website and other information that I've gathered is, they would like to see you have a plan for it within the year type of thing.
Okay.
But the purchasing can go on beyond the year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Toth.
I've got one question, and then I would like to propose an alternate method of attacking this list, because I don't feel that I can support everything on the list, but I feel there are some items that I'd like to just get going out the door. The website is on this list as a $100,000 item. The last time we'd seen the website was for budget 2020. I believe it was deferred at that time. And the request at that time was for $60,000. And that was to include a fair amount of bill paying and enhanced commerce features. So I'm just wondering, that's a 70% increase in the cost on the website. I'm just wondering what backs that up.
Well, this year's budget, this number started at about 75,000, but we're including some contingency. We want to, one of the main reasons we want to do this is for enhanced commerce. And, we don't know the full cost of that yet. And so we just want to make sure we have enough to cover, the cost of doing the website appropriately with enhanced commerce. I mean, this is a maximum, and we would be coming back at the end to tell you how these projects came through.
Councillor Toth, on the same topic, the website. Okay, so I have a question about the website. Is that going to include community engagement? Because I know there are some components that we are looking to put on there, but I don't know if that was included in the previous proposal or now it's been added in.
Well, we definitely want to consider a public engagement with this website. So, often you need a special software attached to the website. So if that's the way we go, then yes, we would be, needing to have enough money for that as well.
Sorry, I can answer that, and I apologize for whatever reason. My camera's not working, so perhaps we could add technology to the list. There will be community engagement regardless of the amount allocated to the website, because we would hope to have a committee formed of staff and key stakeholders and some citizens so that they can tell us, what they most look for on our website and what they are most frustrated with on our website, so that we can find out from our users how we can approach the project better. So yes, there will definitely be some community engagement in the website.
Thank you. Councillor Toth.
Thank you. Another one that I had questions on was the occupational health and safety for $40,000. Is this work that would replace any of the staffing asks that were being proposed for 2021? Or is this in addition to staffing asks out of HR for 2021? Thank you.
In this case, it would be replacing. So that staff ask would not happen for 2021.
Okay, Councillor Toth, you're on a roll.
Apparently. I actually don't have any more questions just yet, but I don't see any more hands. I wanted to try and pitch to council if I could propose accepting a certain block of these, and then we could have further conversation about some of the other ones on the list.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, then I'd like
And I'll
to
highlight them on here as we're going. So
I guess I will make a motion that we accept and incorporate or approve for spending from the COVID restart funds, previous year's COVID related expenses, glass, new workstations in the financial services department, glass on top of the panels in the middle office, dividers in the planning and engineering area, training, organizational development, mental health, digitization of the Sechelt Community Archives, implementation of PLL permitting portion, and occupational health and safety.
Okay, first of all, Jennifer, do you have those?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. So that's been moved that those be approved for spending from COVID restart and seconded. Any other questions or comments on those items? All those in favor? Thank you. All right, Councillor Toth.
Okay, I guess I do have another question. The on-base project implementation, I believe this is with regards to digitizing the remaining of our physical document collection. I don't recall seeing a number this big anywhere where we've talked about it before. So I'm just curious as to know where this number has come from.
Your worship, I can answer that.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Digitization is a big part of this project, but another part of it is just the ongoing uploading of already digitized documents into OnBase, ongoing preparation necessary to convert all of our records, both paper and digital, to the OnBase program across the entire district. So using our own resources to do that, which is what we have been doing for the last several years, means we will continue at the same pace to implement OnBase, which could take 3 years, 5 years. I don't know. It depends on other projects that come along, and that's what's happened for the last 4 or 5 years. We're looking at hiring a company that is familiar with OnBase and is familiar with implementing it across organizations to use their resources and know-how to allow us to implement it by the end of this year. And that amount of money allows for that. It means they will oversee a lot of the project. They will be the liaison between all the other departments to make sure the program, the project is being implemented consistently and moving forward. It includes training. It includes helping us write the policy and procedures manual that we're going to use for OnBase. And those types of things, as well as digitizing all records and shredding and the whole bit. So I guess that to sum up, that amount allows us to buy a lot of resources that we wouldn't have in-house to complete the project as quickly.
Thank you. Councillor Toth, any follow-up for that?
No, I'm happy with that answer. Thank you, Ms. Frank. Admittedly, it's, you know, I can understand in broad strokes the concept, and I'm glad that it is there is funding that's been made available through our COVID safe restart for us to really pursue this, because it needs to be done. I'd like to hear from other members of council about some of the other items, but yeah.
Councillor Rowe?
For Director Douglas, does this OnBase request, does it, I'm trying to think back and I left all my papers at work. Does it require replace an HR ask to do this work?
I think you're maybe confusing this one with the occupational health and safety. The occupational health and safety was staff member request.
Yeah.
This one, there was money put in the budget, or there was a budget request for some funds to do some of the digitization, but not to this.
But it
extent.
would not get it done this year.
No.
Right. Okay.
Councillor, there's a whole bunch of other items there.
I did have another question. I'm sorry.
Yes, Councillor Rowe, go ahead.
With regards to the mental health, I wasn't clear. Is this to, and it's 6 of one, half a dozen of another, but is this to support staff's own mental health, or is it to help them deal with members of the public who might be having some issues? Like, is it a mental health first aid kind of program, or is it more of a personal wellness kind of program?
I believe it's more of a personal wellness.
All right, Councillor Lamb.
There we go. I support this on-base project. I think this will help staff and move projects ahead as the community will know where their projects are without having to, contact staff. I believe that's part of that project. One of the things I'm going to move into the elevator at Seaside Center. I think that's a no. That's a big no for me. I think that space is never used. That's a waste of money. So that'll be the first one I'm going to say no to.
Thank you. Councillor Toth.
I've got a couple of questions for items that aren't on this list yet, but I'm going to move that we approve on-base project implementation for 188,000 to be funded by COVID Restart, just to keep things moving.
Okay, is there a seconder for that recommendation? Seconded. All those in favor? Thank you. All right, anybody else? Councillor Toth.
Guess it's all me. I keep hoping Councillor McLean will put his hand up, because he and I talked about a bunch of this stuff yesterday. So, but it looks like it's all me. I guess this is a question for Mr. Douglas. Would we, because protective services is something that's identified as feasible for COVID Restart, I'm wondering if we would be able to use some amount of funding for a temporary 1 or 2 years funding for an additional bylaw officer to help with health order related enforcement, as well as tourism, short-term rentals, things like that. The logic behind it being, flagged as a temporary type position would be to give our staff a couple of years to look at perhaps other funding options, like maybe increased business license fees for short-term rentals, things like that, that could cover off the cost of that position permanently.
I believe in reading through the documents that would be a potential project. Senior staff have not gotten that far with analyzing whether that's the priority for for recommendation at this point. We have I think we have to put a bylaw in play for short-term rentals before we would hire another additional bylaw officer to be out there, so they have something to enforce, right?
Mr. Allen, you showed up. Did you want to speak to this?
No, thank you. I showed up to indicate that I am in fact participating and hearing and so forth. So I would say a bylaw officer could play a community ambassador role respecting a COVID and public health orders rather than specifically writing tickets, which the authority has not been granted to our officers. So there's that part of it. We did do a little bit of that last spring, this time last year, and into throughout the May long weekend, but more of an advocacy and public relations role than enforcement if we're thinking about COVID related activities.
Thank you. Councillor Lamb and then Councillor McLean.
This is a question for Director Douglas, and it's weighing in on the visitor information vehicle. And would we need to have staff that vehicle, or how would that thing move around?
Ms. Rogers.
I can answer that question, that the Visitor Information Center staff would manage that vehicle. The maintenance would be left up to the District of Sechelt, as it would be our vehicle. It would be mostly used through the summer months when they have extra summer students, and it would be fully staffed by the Visitor Information Center staff.
Councillor Lamb, any follow-up? Councillor, oh. Okay, Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, I just, you know, a part-time vehicle I'm not in favor of. I mean, if that vehicle is something that the district staff could use, then I might support it, but I won't support a vehicle that's 3 or 4 months.
Sorry, I could clarify. It would be used daily through our peak seasons, which would be April to October. The rest of the time it would be utilized for specific events. And in the short term, it could be used as the Visitor Information Center. As you can imagine, it's not ideal to have a Visitor Information Center beside a COVID testing clinic. And so if we get approval for this vehicle, we would be purchasing it immediately. So it would be used daily as the Visitor Information Center, and we could keep our bricks and mortar office closed. And then once the testing clinic is out of Seaside, we can move back into that facility and then use it for, you know, heading out to beaches and having a presence in Davis Bay and having a presence in Friendship Park. And when there's a tournament at Kinnickinnick, being able to go out there. So I would say it would be utilized daily from April to October. And then following that, it would be used for much of our festivals and events that we run through the fall and winter.
Thank you. Councillor Lamb, did you have any other follow-up? Okay, Councillor McLean and then Councillor Toth.
So with apologies to Councillor Toth, I was having a little bit of connectivity issues there. So I missed the discussion on the on-base. But I think I'm fully back up and running now with solid internet connection. And if I didn't miss anything more than that, I believe the website was discussed briefly, but I'd like to put a motion relating to the website. I will move that staff reduce the amount of the website budget and bring back another proposal. So I would like to see it. I just think 100,000 may be a bit high, especially considering that we saw a lower budget previously.
Okay, so is that a recommendation?
Yeah, it's a recommendation that staff bring back a proposal for a website with a lower budget ask.
Do you have an amount that you'd like to see?
No, I want to leave that discretion to staff. I think just look at it again, and can they come back with a lower number? If not, I'll take that, but I would like to see that.
Okay, Councillor, so that's a recommendation that staff revisit the amount requested for the website and see if they can come back with a lower amount. Okay, is there a seconder for that recommendation? Okay, seconded. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Rowe.
Okay, I'm really tired about hearing about the website, and because it seems like we've been having this discussion for a long time, and our website needs to do a lot of things that it doesn't do. And I think this is an opportunity to provide staff with the ability to get a website that does what it needs to do, which I don't fully understand because I'm a nurse. However, I don't really want to put limits on it. I'm going to put a little trust in this, and if Director Douglas brings us back some change, yay, but I'm fine with the 100,000 as long as knowing that it was 75. So I'm assuming that there's some, well, as Director Douglas said, there's some contingency built in there as well. But I expect that it'll do pretty much everything we need it to do for that.
Mr. Douglas.
We are getting a lot of asks for more commerce than we had planned before. We have people, builders asking if they could pay for their building permits, development permits, all online. And, you know, we didn't know, well, originally we didn't even go that far. However, we are getting those asks now because of the environment that we are in.
Well, I think if we have the opportunity, and, you know, we're always talking about how we can make things more efficient for staff and groups like developers. So I think this is our opportunity to do it. So I'd actually like it to be looked at through that lens, and, you know.
Oh. There we go.
Can I mute you, Councillor Lamb? All right, Councillor Scott.
As far as the website goes, or any of these projects go, I would expect staff to price it as best they can and hopefully bring change back to the table. So I don't think we need to waste any more time to reduce this and nickel and dime it for another $10,000, knowing full well that any project we want to try to get under budget if we can. So let's just get going with it and get it done.
Okay, Councillor Lamb and then Councillor Toth.
I just want to echo what Councillor Rowe and Councillor Scott have said. You know, we're so far behind with this website, even I can't figure it out. And yet, you know, you got to, I would, and Director Douglas said that he would, you know, they wanted 100, but they'll come in, you know, they're hoping to come in less. So I just don't want them to come back to us and spend the 80 and then say, guess what, we need $5,000 more. So I'm 100% in support.
Councillor Toth.
Thank you. Having heard the explanation from Director Douglas about contingencies and what have you, and even further expansion than we discussed previously, with paying for permits online, what have you, I'm okay with the upper limit of $100,000. Obviously, I want it to be less. You know, $60,000 a year ago sounded like a lot of money. I still think it's a lot of money for a website. I'm hoping that they'll come back closer to the $60,000 mark. I did have one question about the paying. It might be too early for me to ask this question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. When you're looking at paying for permits online, development permits, building permits, what have you, you know, a lot of places or a lot of people want to pay by credit card, points, things like that. As a business owner, I know that I pay a percentage on a credit card transaction. And so I'm just curious to know how people are primarily paying for building permits currently, because I know that we can't accept credit cards for taxes. So my question is, are we like cash, check, debit, banker's check only right now when we deal with our front counter services? And then with the ongoing costs of processing credit cards and what have you online, we need to definitely have a revisit of our fees, because I don't think it's fair that people should be collecting rewards points off of the district of Sechelt by paying for a $20,000 development permit with their credit card. So, thank you.
Yeah, we don't allow a $20,000 payment for a development on a credit card. So we do have an upward limit for the use of credit card for fees, but we take a whole host of different, you know, cash, check. If it's over a certain value and they're taking something with them, then we would be a banker's check. We also let them use their cards, their bank cards here. So a whole host of methods to pay.
All right, so we have a recommendation on the floor that staff revisit the amount for the website and come back to see if they can reduce that. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. that's defeated. All right, so Councillor Toth.
I'm going to, I mean, I wish I could make a motion right now to put Councillor Lamb on that website review committee, but barring that, I'm going to move that the website with enhanced commerce be funded from COVID restart funds for an amount not to exceed $100,000.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that recommendation? Seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? Would you like that recorded?
No.
Yes? No? Okay, thank you. All right. Next, we have a number of items on here, and I just ended up highlighting a whole bunch of them, so let me get rid of some of the others. Okay, Councillor Toth.
Can I make a motion asking staff to look into and report back on the possibility of a temporarily funded bylaw officer / community ambassador to assist with health order related and tourism related issues, and to report back on possible costs and funding?
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that recommendation? Seconded. Any further comments or questions? All those in favor? All right, thank you. Anything further? So we have left on the list here that has not been approved: visitor information vehicle, elevator at Seaside, accessible washrooms at Writers Festival Office, 4 tents, and wayfinding signs. Are there any others of those you'd like to move forward? Councillor Rowe.
I want to talk about the van,
Okay. talk
visitor
about that.
information vehicle. I'm curious to hear from my council mates what they think of that. I mean, I think it's, personally, I think it's a great idea. I might have a little guilt about the testing center. However, I do know firsthand, had many conversations with visitor information staff, center staff. And, you know, especially now there are circus tents and all the signage. I mean, the place doesn't say, come on in to visitors. And I think this is kind of an opportunity to have a vehicle like many, many other communities have to increase our presence out there. Sort of kill 2 birds with 1 stone, if you will. So.
Anybody else? Councillor McLean.
Yeah, I was iffy on this one, but when looking at these projects, it's what can we do to improve access during COVID times? And right now, getting visitor information away from a respiratory clinic is a good way to increase access. The other good way to increase access is being at the events. So hopefully we can get some small events going up this summer or into the fall. And it'd be really nice to be there, have that presence. And I think that's where we need to be headed within the COVID world as we move forward, not in a fixed location. So I'm going to be in support of this.
Councillor Toth.
Yeah, just a couple of questions regarding, you know, is this a Sunshine Coast tourism vehicle? You know, it was mentioned that we'd be responsible for the ownership and the maintenance and the operating costs of it. But if it's intended to be a Sunshine Coast tourism vehicle, you know, can we get the town of Gibsons to contribute to the cost of this thing? You know, can we get the other funders for Sunshine Coast tourism to contribute to the cost of this thing? I don't know that this is something the District of Sechelt should be paying for all on its own, even if this money technically wasn't ours to begin with, it came from elsewhere. That's sort of one question. And then another concern is with COVID times, I'm honestly not concerned about trying to get information to visitors. We've been really lucky with our COVID counts up here. Visitors can stay home until we can reopen properly.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb and Councillor Scott.
Yeah, am I on here?
Yes, you are. We can hear you just fine.
Excellent. Yeah, hey, we have the tourist, our tourist location office is the worst location of any office anywhere. And, we've been working, like 6 years ago, they were starting a plan to put in a new tourist office someplace else. So I'd rather see the $65,000 go towards that than a vehicle. And exactly, the community is not going to be open this year. I mean, last year we got swamped with tourists, but we're still going to be we're still not going to be full on for this summer. So I'm not real excited about this one.
Okay, Councillor Scott and then Councillor Kuster.
I'm not getting a sense from the proposal as to what the vision of this vehicle is. Is it like a panel van, repurposed food truck that we can hand stuff out of, or is it kind of a community service vehicle? And maybe we can, Ms. Rogers can give us maybe her vision as to what kind of vehicle she's looking for.
At the moment, what we're looking for is something inexpensive. We would like it to be distinctive. If you think about Tofino, they've got a Volkswagen bus, which is really cool, and people know to look for the bus. So we would like to find something distinctive, but price and durability and reliability is our number one concern on that. And then we'll have it wrapped. So it will automatically be distinctive because we will have it wrapped in appropriate branding for Sunshine Coast Tourism and Seashelt. And with that, if I could just answer a couple of the other questions that have come up with respect to seeing if we can get some other funding partners on board, we could certainly do that. That would slow the project down. And then what do we do if everybody's in except Gibson's? Do we decide we're going to do it anyway, but not allow the van to go to Gibson's? So our thought was Seashelt is fortunate enough to have this funding. Our visitor center is the busiest one on the Sunshine Coast. We are, in fact, the heart of the Sunshine Coast. So it gives us some control over the vehicle in that it's ours and our events will always come first. We could create an agreement with the other municipalities on the coast so that if there is an event somewhere else and they would like to use the vehicle, they will sign the agreement, and for a fee, we could allow it to go there as long as we don't have anything happening in Seashelt at the time. So that's our vision for, keeping it Seashelt centric, but servicing our tourists. Sunshine Coast Tourism and Visitor Information Centers are preparing for a very busy summer this year. We are expecting levels higher than they were last year. That is what Destination BC is preparing for, and that's what we're preparing for. This vehicle purchase is part of Sunshine Coast Tourism strategic plan. It is one of their key objectives is to have a visitor information vehicle to service the whole coast, but we will start with Seashelt and see where we go from there.
To your point about tourists, I was at Downtown Business Association meeting this morning, and all of the stores owners downtown who were at the meeting said they are seeing visitors here already. So they're busy downtown. In fact, there was some event that the Downtown Business Association was going up to their members to say, we'd like to put this on. And they said, no, not now. We're busy. Councillor Kuster and Councillor Scott.
I guess I was on the fence. I still am a little bit. I agree with Councillor Toth and Councillor Lamb, but I also see Councillor Rose point. if we were to move forward with the vehicle, I think, and other people are going to use it, it definitely should be looked at for a fee. I mean, we're going to have maintenance on that vehicle future. That's not going to come out of COVID fees, 5 years down the road. So we got to look at that kind of stuff. And I think it definitely should be, if it should be a district of Sechelt tourism visitation vehicle, not like for, the other community, the rest of the community. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yeah, thank you. Councillor Scott.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around the size of vehicle and stuff, but is there, I think if we're going to go down this road, it might be worthwhile to maybe look at electric. If we don't need a van, we can get away with, either a Leaf or a Bolt or something along those lines. And I think that would send a good message to the community as part of this, as far as being sustainable. So something to consider.
And that may or may not be an option, given they're going to be hauling, flyers and leaflets and all kinds of different things. I don't know. So does somebody want to make a recommendation about a visitor information center vehicle? Your visitor information vehicle. Councillor Rowe.
I'll make a motion that we fund a visitor information vehicle as indicated, up to $65,000 out of the COVID relief funds.
Is there a seconder for the recommendation? Seconded. Seeing no further comments or questions, all those in favor? Okay, so we've got 4. Those opposed? Okay, so 3 opposed. So that passes. Elevator, yeah, Councillor Kuster? Would you like that recorded?
Oh, no, I just want to say, if
Yeah, thanks.
I would like to add possibly that we look at some form of, like, if someone else is going to use that vehicle, that we look at, put that in there, that we would be charging a fee to cover off maintenance. And then I probably would be in favor of it. So
I think that was part of what the business proposal is that is in here. It actually indicated that they would be charging a fee if they do that. Okay.
Okay, I missed that. Okay, perfect.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Toth.
I just wanted to make sure that it got caught. I did want my vote, my
Recorded.
opposition recorded, please.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else who is opposed want their vote recorded? Yes, Councillor Lamb. Okay, thank you. Elevator at Seaside. So I know that there's conversation, I'm just gonna throw this out there. I know there's conversation about upgrading the technology at Seaside to potentially, make it more accessible and usable for meetings, etc. Currently, without an elevator, that limits the floor space that can be used for a lot of the events where accessibility is an issue. We can't use the upstairs. The elevator would actually make it more accessible, even for things like the Arts Festival, where they use the main floor and they use the upstairs. I mean, I always think the upstairs part of the Arts Festival, or the festival we use, Sechelt Arts Festival, is the best part. They have some really neat stuff up there, and there are a lot of people who can't get up there. So it would make the building more accessible. Councillor Toth.
Thank you. I'm not opposed to the concept of putting in an elevator at the Seaside Center, but I want to make sure that we're doing it for the right reasons. We don't have enough space in Municipal Hall. We've talked about this before. We need to figure something out. We're looking at perhaps taking the Visitor Information Center and putting it on the road instead. Is there an opportunity for us to repurpose part of the Seaside Center for municipal offices that don't require us to lease space somewhere else, that don't require us to build onto a building or build a new building? And if it becomes, it was part of a broader discussion that, you know, yes, we're going to have some second floor offices for our planning department, and, you know, those need to be publicly accessible, then yes, I'd support an elevator as part of, you know, work to do that. Especially if we're looking at, you know, technology in Seaside Center, could we look at multi-purposing that building so it's our new council chambers, which would then let us turn the existing space in Municipal Hall over to the library, or renovate it and put a second floor in it for more offices. I don't want to piecemeal work, and I don't see urgency on putting an elevator into the Seaside Center. We've got a number of venues already around town. We're looking at upgrading Rockwood Lodge. You know, they're looking at all sorts of possibilities down the road. So I don't want us to necessarily piecemeal this work. Thanks.
All right, what about tents? 4 tents. I think this is for being able to have additional meeting space, additional program space for the library outside. We can use them all over the community as well. Any comments or questions about tents? Councillor Todd.
We had 1 tent, 2 tents that were stolen in the past. I'm wondering if those were ever replaced.
We had a 20 by 20 tent that walked away this winter. We still have our 10 by 20 tent. And it is, we think we still have the 10 by 20 tent. We need to check and make sure we still have all of the poles. We think we will have something that may be usable. But as you know, our largest tent is usually used for the summer music series. We put it up in June and we leave it up for the summer. The library would like to use tents for programming. We would like to be able to use tents for meetings. And, you know, when we have community engagement at the farmers market and other such things like that, we are down to only 1 tent that we think, but have not put up yet. So we're pretty sure it's usable.
Just a follow-up question. So the 4 that you're looking at, there's no size indications or anything like that. Would it be more 20 by 20s, or would it be some 10 by 20s, some 20 by 20?
The thought at this time is to get 4 10 by 10s, because you can always put 2 10 by 10s together and then you have a 10 by 20. And they are of commercial quality so that they can withstand wind, cold temperatures. They come with weights instead of spikes so that they don't blow away, things like that. And they could be fully branded and come with sides.
Thank you. I actually spent 4 years in the tenting industry, so I know all about these tents. I'm willing to move them to be funded from COVID in the amount of $30,000.
Is there a seconder for the recommendation? Seconded. Seeing no further questions or comments, all those in favor? Any opposed? Councillor McLean, would you like that recorded? Thank you. All right, we have 3. So it sounds like elevator is a bigger conversation. So we're not saying no, but we're not saying yes. We want to have a bigger conversation around space, because we know that space is a concern at the municipality, and we need to look at how we're going to use the space that we have. So staff would need to come back with some additional information and a bigger conversation around space. Accessible washrooms at Writers Festival office and wayfinding signs are the only 2 left on the list. Councillor Toth.
Question about the wayfinding signs. Did we not apply for grant funding to cover off this particular project in the past? Or is this an expanded scope project or something else entirely?
Ms. Rogers?
We did apply for a grant for wayfinding signs. We were not successful in receiving that grant.
So this is looking at the fact that we have, what, 4 or 5 different branded signs throughout the district. And I know some of them that we have in the downtown area, when you're driving by, you can't read them because the lettering's too small. Various things like that.
Yeah, it's, the signs are not all necessarily in the best location anymore. Some of them have rotting posts and will need to be removed very soon because they are going to become a hazard. Some of them point to businesses, which is not something a municipality should be doing. We want our wayfinding signs to point to the attractions that we want people to attend to, and they don't currently do that.
I'd actually like to see some signs pointing to parking too.
In this town, parking would be an attraction.
I know. There actually is a lot of parking. It's just people don't know where it is. So wayfinding signs. What are we gonna do about wayfinding signs? Councillor Toth.
Apparently I'm speaking to all of them. I'm personally, I'm not prepared to see this move forward yet. It's not a no, it's just a maybe not yet. I'd like to see if other opportunities or partnerships come along. See what else we might need. You know, $102,000 is a lot of money. It's the second largest item on this list. And yeah, just not prepared to support it yet.
Councillor Kuster.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the exact same thing. It's just such a huge dollar amount, and I feel like we might be able to put that money towards something, you know, something else. So I'm not in favor of that.
Okay, so we'll leave that one for now. Accessible washrooms at Writers Festival office. Councillor McLean.
Yeah, I guess I could speak to this one and take Councillor Toth off the hot seat. I'm not in favor of this one. I'm all in favor of accessible washrooms. But when I look at this grant, I'm looking at impacts of COVID. And I don't believe accessible washrooms are an impact of COVID. So I'd like to see this funded by other methods.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor McLean.
I think we're almost at the end of the list here.
We're at the end of the list.
So I do have a couple other ideas because we do have a fair amount of funds remaining. However, I think it'd be more appropriate to discuss these with Director Douglas first to make sure that they are eligible, so I'm not taking up council's time. So I'll take them offline with Director Douglas, and then we can bring them back to a future council meeting. However, there was one more general area that I think we can also consider when we look at COVID restart grants. Looking at the list at the top of page 74, there is an item that is programs related to vulnerable populations. I think we should try and focus on that area and see what we can do with some of these COVID restart grants. And I think we can create a major program that would be related to vulnerable populations using some of these funds because we do have a fairly large chunk of money remaining.
Thank you. Councillor Kuster.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask about that. And that was one reason I was thinking, gee, that 102,000 could go towards vulnerable people in our community. So I was going to ask, like, what kind of things could staff come back with that we could use that money for to help, you know, our community.
Okay, so I think that sounds like a conversation for us to have with staff to see, explore that, and then come up with some ideas. Councillor Toth.
I was going to propose exactly that because Councillor McLean had talked about taking some of this offline and discussing it with Director Douglas. And, you know, if we come up with a few possibilities, we can always come back and stick it on an agenda and talk about it. One question I did have, which may isn't entirely clear within the defined bullets that are on that same page. You know, the community investment program that we operate is very well subscribed. I don't know what the numbers look like yet for this year. Hoping Councillor Rowe will have an update for us someday. But I'm wondering if we can use some of our COVID restart funding to top up that program in lieu of taking it from taxation or something like that.
Mr. Douglas.
Just a couple of comments there. We're not supposed to use COVID money to replace, so the lesser taxation. If we were to, we can pass these monies out to not-for-profits, but not for like individuals or individual groups. So there is that avenue, but once again, their application would have to be follow the path to COVID reopening costs.
Councillor Toth.
Just to follow up to that, so perhaps not boosting the CIP, but doing something more akin to what the town of Gibson's has done, where they've set up a separate grant program. You know, I think they've set $25,000 into it for organizations to apply for that have been impacted by COVID to help with their costs and issues.
All right, Councillor Kuster. Okay, take your hand down there. Okay, so we're done with COVID restart for now. There will be an offline conversation with some ideas that will be run by Mr. Douglas, Director of Financial Services, about some of the ideas to see whether or not they fit. And then there'll be further reports coming back to council.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So next item is sorry, I have to get to item 10.4. Item 10.4, request for decision, development permit 2017-30 West Porpoise Bay Estates extension. Motion to receive the report. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. Mr. Allen.
Yes, thank you. I'll be very brief here. The RTC company is ready to go on both projects. We expect we're under pre-application review for the development permit on Shore and Cliff, and the development permit for the West Porpoise Bay Estates. They are seeking formal renewal. We've had discussions, and I'll be frank, I indicated yes, an extension is acceptable. Upon reading the procedure bylaw, because it was issued by council resolution, it's most appropriate to have council endorse extension of the development permit with original conditions as issued, and financing is in place, and we expect to see that carry on in the near future here. So we're seeking an endorsement to extend until August 21st, 2022 per the applicant's request. Thank you.
Councillor Scott. Thank you.
One of the conditions of the RTC property on Marine Way was creating an agreement with the other residents there on the use of the road. Have they completed that?
Not that I'm aware of. It certainly would be one of our follow-up tasks to inform the adjacent residents of the extension, so that they can, so they're aware, and so that parties can pursue the agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Toth.
Thank you. Procedurally, is an applicant limited to only one extension or two extensions? I'll ask that question first.
Yeah, so I don't have the procedure bylaw open in front of me, but generally speaking, one can have an extension. And so the point of this extension is to more or less commence development, and then you're past development permit. Once it's approved and all the conditions are met, then you're into building permit. But this one here, I would suggest they've asked for a particular timeline of August 2022, and if it's not achieved, I would suggest permit is lapsed.
Thank you. I'm willing to move recommendation 2, the development permit 2017-30 be extended until August 21st, 2022. I just wanted to make one comment that I know that there was some contention when we approved this in the first place. Shortly after approving it, the property went on the market. I know it's not on the market now, so hopefully that is a good sign. Hopefully there is progress on this, because I drive by it every day and nothing has changed. So thank you.
Is there a seconder for the recommendation? Seconded. Thank you. Councillor Scott.
Sorry, I just didn't lower my hand.
All right. Any other comments or questions on the recommendation on the floor? All those in favor? Thank you. Was that everybody? I think so. I've got delay happening. Perfect. Thank you. Moving on to item 10.5. Is there anything further? Just to clarify, Director Allen, is there anything further? We just approve it. That's it. We're done with that one. There's nothing further to do on that.
That's correct. We now have the
Okay,
resolution too, and staff will carry on from here and advise applicants and Strata Corporation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So item 10.5, Seashell Public Library Funding and Service Agreement. Motion to receive the report. Moved. Is there a seconder? Seconded. All in favor? Thank you. Mr. Douglas.
Thank you, Your Worship. The district has been working with the Seychelles Indian government and the SCRD to come together on an agreement with funding the public library. And I started this almost a year ago, and it's gone through various versions. And so now the staff members have been involved, are happy with the outcome of the agreement. One of the things that are included in the agreement is 5-year funding plan for the library from all jurisdictions. The library has presented to us last week and to the other governments and is included in the agreement. 5-year budgeting. The first year is a 2.5% increase over the previous year, 4% in the second year, and then 3% for 2003 to 2025. The focus of the agreement was on funding allocation for all the parties, and Mayor Seeger started this conversation with SRD about a year ago, I think it was, about apportionment and how would that play, how would that look like, just to make the funding more fair, more equity, or we're heading, in the right direction with the way the funding should look more like. And so this agreement does that. It's not perfect yet. It's heading down the path that we've all wanted to go with, using population as a base for apportionment, and having everybody look at funding their fair share or their share. On page 3 of 12 of the agreement, or the agenda page number
100.
100, is the calculation of what will be paid by each group each year. And at the bottom of the agreement, and I believe it is it's on page 11 of 12, or page 108 of the agenda package, is the description of the apportionment and how that is defined within the agreement. So we're looking for council to authorize the agreement, and if that happens, we will sign it and send it out to the other parties for their signature.
And I believe as well that both the SCRD and SIGD have council and board have approved the funding agreement at their tables. Is that correct?
Just recently they have, yes.
Yes. Thank you. Any questions of council? Councillor Rowe.
Oh, I don't really have a question. I just want to commend everybody for, I know this has been a lot of work, and this something that was really, really needed. So just appreciation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor McLean, and then Councillor Toth.
Yeah, this agreement is a big improvement on the previous agreement. There is a sense of logic, sense being the key word. And I'll get to that in a minute. I am in full support of the library. I am in full support of the funding levels mentioned here, and I will be supporting this motion. However, I do have major reservations. The notion that Pender Harbor is served 33% of what is served in the District of Sechelt is not fair. The District of Sechelt pays a larger share than they are required to. We provide the building at the minimal rent. We provide a majority of the funding. And the Area A and the SIGD do not pay for 100% of their population. I know why we got here. It's just the funding model for libraries on the Sunshine Coast is broken. The fact that there are individual budgets for each area, and this agreement requires 6 or 5 different funders to come together to an agreement to fund a library, is absolutely ridiculous. I'm amazed that we did it. I thank you everyone to do it. I'm happy that we did it, but it should not be this hard. We should have a regional library service. It should be operated by the regional district. We should have one library across the Sunshine Coast with multiple branches, Sechelt, Gibsons, Pender Harbor, Roberts Creek, but it is one organization that is funded by one service at the SCRD. That is why we have a regional district for large organizations like this. And if anyone is around for the next renewal, if anyone is thinking of running, I highly suggest that we move to a regional district library.
Thank you, Councillor Toth.
Thank you. It is an endeavor, you know, having been both at this table and at the regional district table for the conversation around this 5-year agreement. It's an ordeal, which is why it's a 5-year agreement and not revisited every year. And six years ago, I guess, the councils and board decided that it was a good idea to stop with the yearly hat in hand business. And, you know, that first agreement may have been pretty broken, but it was something, and it was something to build on. And I think that this is a good building on that. You know, I know there was already conversation at the regional district about the SIGD apportionment, because they are not fully served, not 100% population served in this agreement. You know, this agreement does not lock everybody in for 5 years. There is still the ability to renegotiate or continue to negotiate or continue to look at things within the funding envelope. This just means that it's not going to tie up hours and hours of everybody's time every year. One thing that I do appreciate being in here on page, I guess it's page 101 of our agenda package, you know, in 2.4 and 2.5, if the library has a significant surplus of funds, they're going to provide details to everybody about how they intend on using that surplus. And that, you know, if there is a significant surplus in excess of 10%, the funders do have the ability to reduce the allocation for the next year to sort of bring it back. You know, the library should have a operating reserve to replace stuff that might fail outside of their asset management plan. But we certainly don't need an organization hoarding cash. And so I think that's an important one to highlight out of here. Yeah, happy to support this. Happy it's done. Hopefully I won't be around the next time it comes up in conversation.
I'm going to turn to page 100 and look at clauses 1.3 and 1.4. I think those are new. And the first one lays out how the various funders are going to actually pay to the library. That was not clear before. And so there were times when the library was wondering where their money was coming and when it was coming. So that lays it out very clear for the funders. And then the next one is important as well. Funding at the regional district cannot be used for capital items. District Sechelt funding, you can be used for capital or operating or whatever. So we again lay that out in here. So that allows the library to apportion the money where it's needed. Because I agree, they have, I mean, their computers need to be replaced. You know, those kinds of things. So
Absolutely.
Staff have done a very good job on this. And I thank you for your persistence and the work that you've done. Councillor Kuster.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say, yeah, I'm happy to see this move forward with the 5-year agreement. And now that I'm on the library board, I really appreciate what Leanne and her staff do. Like, I had no idea before, so I'm happy to move, you know, recommendation number 2, that council approve the proposed Sechelt Public Library funding and service agreement.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for the recommendation? Seconded. Before we vote on this, I'm going to go to the corporate officer. Do we also need to have something in here indicating that, you know, the mayor and corporate officer or whoever can sign this? Does that need to be in here, or is that stated as, you know, or part of this as it's put forward?
Your worship, for certainty, we could add it. It's usually our practice to add it. What you've got in front of you is enough. It endorses it, which is enough authority, but it could be added at your will, at council's will.
That's fine. I'm just, as long as it works, I'm okay with the way it's written. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor? Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Councillor reports. All right, we're going to start with Councillor Kuster, Rowe, Toth, Scott, McLean, and Lamb. So Councillor Kuster, you're up first.
I don't have a lot to report. We had a housing advisory committee meeting that we just tried to, I'm a loss for words for now. Try to hone in how we were going to move forward with the call to action and what our kind of focus was and our goals. And we were missing our leader that day. So, but yeah, it was a good meeting, lots of good discussions with who was there. And yeah, that's all I have to report this week.
Thank you. Councillor Rowe.
Well, meetings. A steering committee for the poverty reduction plan, getting ready for 3 community forums coming up. One in Sechelt, well, not in, but one focused on Sechelt, one focused on Gibsons, and one on the rural areas. And I can't quote the dates, sorry, but more information coming soon. We also had a communication group meeting following the housing meeting. So I'm on the communication group. So we met to do some work before the meeting coming up on March 22nd. And then I've just been reviewing grants. We've, I think, got about $99,000 worth of requests and about half that much to grant. So here we go. The hard work begins. That's it.
Thank you. Councillor Toth.
I don't have anything to report. I've attended a couple things, but you all were there, so I don't really need to speak about them. Other than that, I'm enjoying the spring weather and trying to get some outside work done before I get bogged down with anything else.
Thank you. Councillor Scott.
Same, yeah, just meetings that were attended with you guys, and I was away last week on holidays, which was great, and nothing else to report.
Thank you, Councillor McLean.
Thank you. I want to thank the mayor for stepping in for me at the housing meeting, and I apologize to all the committee members for missing that meeting. And that's all I have to report.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb.
It's me. I attended the Squedo meeting on March the 8th. And a lot of the discussion was around the recommendations that came out of the Housing Advisory Committee. And with that, I guess Colin was trying to figure out how to, what's going to be the best use of his time now, because he really wants to get involved in that project. Yeah, Squedo, so their website is up and running, but it is not complete at this time, but it is working. And Squedo was looking at getting an RFP together to do a highway economic study to get ready for a social economic study to get ready for a Modi corridor bypass study. And then also they want to run the Business Excellence Award, getting the community involved more and making it so it's not just a one day thing. It would take 4 or 5 months to put it together. So they would be. So anyways, that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm just going to talk about a few things. I attended the track meeting. They had Mikhail Colville Anderson, lives over in Scandinavia country somewhere, I think Copenhagen area. But what's interesting is he has a tie to the Sunshine Coast. He has a sister who has a place on, I think he said Texada. Were you there, Councillor McLean? Yes, I think Texada. And so every year, up until last year when we had COVID, he actually came through here on his way to visit his sister on Texada Island. So it was a group from up and down the Sunshine Coast talking about, riding our bikes and how we don't feel safe on the highway, etc. But he could relate to everything that we talked about. So it was quite interesting. And there were some very good points that he made. I asked a question about going to the provincial government and doing the advocacy work there. And he said, well, think about this. He said, don't just go to Ministry of Transport, go to education, also go to health, right? Also go to environment, just spread it around and get all of them on the same page. So we'll probably look at that when we come up to UBCM here and see what we can make happen. VCH call. So we're doing the VCH calls with Vancouver Coastal Health every Friday. And I just wanted to put out to the community a couple of stats that they mentioned. They said on the Monday when the phone lines were opened, they had identified 65,000 people in BC who were 90 plus who could phone in to book appointments. They had over 1 million calls on Monday. So obviously other people besides those who were actually to be calling in did call. So they had some issues on Monday with that. It was sorted out by Tuesday. There are 3 locations on the Sunshine Coast, Gibson's Legion, Seashell Seniors Activity Center, Madeira Park Legion. They are also going out to all of the homes where home care is being provided. And now they're looking at how do they reach the people that, and I actually have some numbers. Sorry, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but they actually know how many people on the Sunshine Coast are over 80, because that's the numbers we're working on now. They know how many are known to home care, and they're looking at identifying the rest. So we will be reaching out to the Seniors Planning Table, for example, to the Pender Harbor associations to find these people who want to make sure that if they want a vaccine and they're homebound, that they actually get a vaccine. I attended with Councillor Toth the Sunshine Coast Community Forest meeting on Monday. They have finished harvesting 2 blocks. They say prices are really good. They will be doing some more. They're prepping some more for logging in the next while. One of the things that they are looking at setting up is a firewood program for the Sunshine Coast. Still working out details on that, but we know that there are some people on the Sunshine Coast who don't have money for firewood, and yet that's how they heat their houses. So we're looking at how do we provide firewood for them. And then this morning I attended the Downtown Business Association meeting. They talked about the Business Improvement Area Bylaw, which is going to be coming before us shortly. Periwinkle Lane, they do have some businesses who've indicated they're going to provide funding to do the work on Periwinkle Lane. The Arts Council is involved in artwork, etc. on there. And then the Taste of Seashout is going to be happening in May. They said last year it was very well attended. $5, you could visit different restaurants and get different bits of tastes from their restaurant. So I'll be coming back to us in May. And then I just wanted to mention the Game of Floods. So Game of Floods, we did the one session with the Fraser Basin Council and the District of Seashout in 2019, and we had scheduled 2020, the next piece in the sequence, 3 sessions altogether. Of course, we had to cancel that. They've rejigged it. They're going to be doing 2 sessions. One is this Thursday night, 6:30. You have to pre-register, and then the following week is another session. This Thursday, you do the prep work for, what are we actually going to be looking at? What are the things we're going to consider? And then on the 25th, we actually play a game. And we look at all of the considerations and decisions that need to be made for Seashout dealing with sea level rise. So if you haven't registered, you can go to our website, District Seashout website. What's new? It was still on there at the beginning of this meeting. And you can register and you will get the link to come to the meeting. That's all I've got for now. Councillor Toth.
I just wanted to, you reminded me with the firewood program comments. I just wanted to add on that while they are looking at a portion of it for low income support, a good part of the program is also for people who just don't know who to trust when it comes to buying firewood on the Sunshine Coast. There's a lot of vendors up here that may or may not be poaching firewood, and you just don't know who you're getting it from. And so that the way it was expressed to us, that was my understanding, was a large part of this is to deal with a reliable sort of certified source. And they're looking for help with the splitting and stacking parts of the process through one of the organizations in town as part of a work opportunity. So that was my understanding from the conversation we'd had on the firewood topic. Unfortunately, I had to leave that meeting early.
Yeah. There's still pieces to be sorted out, but more information will be coming forward once it's finalized. Councillor McLean.
Yeah, just a quick thought on the firewood. Why are we continuing to encourage firewood through this program? I'd rather focus this be on trying to reduce the number of wood burning fireplaces that we have in Seashell. We look at the carbon emissions, we look at the smoke and the air pollution that it's a result in the illegal firewood poaching. I think we could have many more benefits by encouraging other sources of heat to heat our homes than firewood.
Thank you. Councillor Toth, SCRD report.
Thank you. My SCRD report is attached to the amended agenda because I was traveling on Friday, so I wasn't able to get it in to staff on time for it to make it for the regular agenda. A couple things I wanted to highlight out of there. It was discussed and recommended for approval at round 2 budget, the 5-year funding agreement for the library from the SCRD's perspective. That's where we did have some conversation about future negotiations on apportionment and what have you. But for now, we're going to sign it and move on. I had a placeholder in here that I forgot to elaborate on, but there were several SCRD fire department requests that were recommended for approval. One was a new self-contained breathing apparatus equipment and filling station for Roberts Creek. I think there was rescue truck upgrades. There was a lot of insurance benefits for the volunteer firefighters. So in the rural areas, the volunteer firefighters are now going to be covered by health and medical benefits, whereas they weren't before. Little, some other items like that. One thing to note, I did put it in here, but we don't participate in the fire department's function with the regional district, of course. I have no idea if the Sechelt Volunteer Fire Department firefighters get benefits and what have you, but that's within the purview of the improvement district to handle. So I'm seeing a head shake there. So maybe they should be seeing if they can get in on the SCRD benefits program. One of the things I wanted to highlight here was that there was a recommendation passed to look at biocover options for the Sechelt landfill as part of the final closure. There might be an opportunity for us to partner with the SCRD to get rid of some of our biosolids from the Dusty Road site, stuff that can't be composted into Class A compost. I'm sure Director Dillon will be participating in that discussion, but just in case nobody comes to him anytime soon, I wanted to make sure he was aware of that potential, so we can thoroughly insert ourselves in that conversation. And then I attached several of the slides, from the spring 2021 water update. Couple things, primarily around the supply deficit and the forecast, and also looking at our water demand reductions per capita, like baseline 10, 20, 30%. One slide that really sort of drives home why we need to look at metering and demand reduction is on page, sorry, the slides are sideways for me. On page 118 of our agenda package, it shows status quo demand on our water system out to 2035. And it shows that even with Grey Creek improvements and Church Road and Langdale improvements, by about 2026, 2027, we would still need to find another water source. But the next slide takes into account a reduction based on water metering. And that shows that not only do we not need another source before 2035, but it allows us to potentially defer the Grey Creek upgrades to 2032. So it allows us to stretch out that capital cost and allows us to defer further sources of water. So happy to take any questions, but yeah, those are the highlights from the report this week.
I'm going to make one more point that wasn't put in here, much put in there. It will be added when we start going up to the community, when we talk about the AAP and the funding. If you go back to the report that was done in 2011, 2012, the water demand management report, it talked about the fact that we were getting close to capacity at the water treatment center, the water treatment plant. And that in that report, it said by 2020, which is last year, we would need to upgrade the water treatment plant. Given the conservation that has happened to date, we've actually been able to push off improving or increasing the capacity at the water treatment plant. And that's a major saving. So by implementing water meters and reducing the amount of water that is used, we will actually push that out further. So it actually saves us money on that end, because increasing the volume that has to go through the water treatment plant is a major cost. Any questions for Councillor Toth? All right, let's move on to item 12.1, release of items from closed meeting. And there's a recommendation there that the report from the corporate officer regarding release of resolutions from the January 27, 2021 closed council meeting be received. Further, that the following council resolutions be confirmed in open meeting. Number 1, that Douglas Dunn and Alexander Parker be appointed to the Community Investment Program Committee for 2-year terms. Number 2, that council appoint Scott Hanna and Dana Capel to the Advisory Planning Commission until December 31st, 2023. Someone like to make those recommendations? Moved and seconded, all in favor? Thank you. Motion to receive the council correspondence. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. Then council, would you like to address any of these? Councilor McLean.
Yeah, let's start with number 4, the email from S. White, Sunshine Coast Homelessness Advisory Committee urgent letter. Yeah, I think our staff provided some comments to the media and provided some comments back about that. However, I did want to add that I'm not aware of any issues like specifically, but there is the larger issue of we are selling a large number of houses, and when these houses sell, they try and bring them into compliance. And within our zoning bylaw, there are a couple challenging provisions that could lead to people not wanting to rent out secondary suites, which I think is something I'd really like to see addressed through the zoning bylaw process.
Thank you. Councillor Toth.
Just to further add on about item number 4 in the correspondence, I was a little surprised to read the letters because I've seen them at the SCRD as well. We're going to be talking about them tomorrow, actually. Because yeah, my understanding was the local governments aren't participating in this. Like it's a non-starter. You know, the comment about housing sales and trying to bring things into compliance when you buy a property and zoning issues. There are also residential tenancy board issues. You know, we know that there are bad landlords. We know that there are bad tenants out there. Provincial regulations keep favoring tenants over landlords, which is great from one perspective, but it's terrible if you're considering renting out a secondary suite. You know, I know that the rate hikes for residential rents were frozen for 2020. I think they've been pegged at 1.1% or something like that for 2021 and can't be instituted until after July. You know, there are a number of compounding issues that make it harder and harder to facilitate renting secondary suites. So I think there might be some levels of advocacy in this that we need to look at addressing, you know, through UBCM or something. I don't know what they are just yet, but happy to have conversations about that and try and figure it out before UBCM. In number 1 on the correspondence, it talks about, you know, concerns with the timeline on vaccine distributions and the communications even. And I noticed that the letter is dated from February 18th. And when I read the letter, you know, it's nice that we've received this letter. I think this letter is already out of date because I think the province has already vastly improved their communications on the COVID vaccine rollouts. Just wanted to flag that, you know, another one that's sort of a non-issue by the time it gets to us. So.
Okay, with regards to the letter in number 4 from the Sunshine Coast Homelessness Advisory Committee, I believe the town of Gibsons has been in communication with Director Allen and our CAO, Andrew Yates. They did do up a letter, as I understand, and send it in response, and then communicated with our staff. So I'm wondering if our staff can tell us what that information was. If they've received it, they would have only received it in the last couple of days, so it may have gotten buried somewhere. Mr. Allen.
We did receive an email respecting a council resolution from CAO Machado, passing a resolution. I will take a quick look for it here.
Okay. While you're doing that, I just wanted to draw everybody's attention to the response from Elena Farmer from Ministry of Transport with regards to the letter to Sunshine Coast Highway Society. Indicated that they have determined who the project manager is, right? Vincent Ong, and that he will be reaching out in the future to initiate engagement with the key stakeholders and the Indigenous groups on the study. So that process is in movement, moving forward.
I've located the email if you would like.
Okay, yes,
me to
please.
read it out. Whereas council is concerned about zoning bylaw enforcement that could result in rental evictions. Council is also concerned about ensuring enforcement of the zoning bylaw in those cases where public safety is deemed to be at risk. Council is further concerned about severely compounding effect of Sunshine Coast housing crisis and the COVID-19 pandemic. And be it resolved that the town of Gibson's bylaw enforcement staff be directed to exercise their discretion not to proceed with immediate enforcement against zoning contraventions if compliance would result in rental evictions. And with review of the situation no later than December 21st of 2021. Staff continue to prioritize immediate enforcement where public safety is deemed to be at risk. Bylaw enforcement continue with regard to existing non-conforming rental properties determined to be without adequate zoning and authorization for the rental units. And further, that staff continue to collaboratively work with property owners to reach conformance, particularly if the result is to expand affordable rental housing supply in the town. So to summarize it, and it's similar here, we observe and are aware of rental concerns, remain aware and concerned about safety concerns, about density and expectations. For example, you may see somebody wishing to take a single family dwelling in a single family zone and turn it into an apartment, doesn't meet the building code for safety purposes. So we are aware and concerned about those. And we take into consideration anytime we consider enforcement and we look at communication, problem solving options prior to strict enforcement. And I would also note, if anything, the complaints we receive are more likely to come from tenants living in poor situations rather than neighbors attempting to kick out tenants from suites, for example.
Thank you. So council, did you want to do anything with this? Do you just want to accept it? And we've accepted it. Did you want to respond or not?
Knowledge receipt.
Knowledge receipt. Thank you. Councillor Toth?
Yeah, I think the response from our the newspaper article was more than sufficient. I think in terms of action, yeah, acknowledging receipt, maybe identifying what Director Allen said there, but yeah, I don't think we need to take any further action on it at this time.
All right, I will take that back to the next Homelessness Advisory Committee meeting. Seeing nothing further on the correspondence, do we have any emergency items?
No, we do not, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd look for a motion to adjourn. Moved and seconded, all in favor? Thank you very much.